right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome inside the Fan Cave. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Bob Pompeani here. Andrew Fillipponi's up at 93.7 The Fan. We want you to call us at 412-575-2600. Penguins got a nice win tonight, 5-1 over the Flyers in Philly. Crosby, a couple of goals. We'll talk more about that in a second. But first, it's the topic that won't go away, and that's the way the Steelers lost yesterday. It's one thing to lose. It's another thing to put out one of the worst games, I think, in the history of the franchise. I mean, you can go back, since we're going back 50 years, to talk about a run defense that gave up 249 yards. Last time that's happened in a Pittsburgh venue was all the way back in 1975 with O.J. Simpson, of all people, doing it. And this was one of those games, Andrew, that I looked at and I said, okay, it's bad, but how bad? I looked at the game against the Bengals earlier this year in Cincinnati on that Thursday night. That was pretty bad when you allow Flacco to come in and throw for 500 yards, and they target one man 23 times. You know, the Green Bay game bugged me a lot because of the way it happened. They led at halftime, which has been a recurring theme. They're leading at halftime, and then Jordan Love goes on a heater, and they lose that game. But this one just was never had the feeling that the Steelers were in this game. Your take on that game yesterday?
Well, I actually thought it did for 30 minutes. And then as soon as Joey Bosa sacked Aaron Rodgers and basically broke him in half and his nose was bleeding all over the Acrisure Stadium turf, Matt Canada used to be the brunt of those jeers and Bronx cheers from Steelers fans. This time it was reflected towards the head coach and the defense, Bob. They weren't having Renegade one bit yesterday.
No, and what T.J. Watt said after the game I thought was the most alarming thing in that they ran a play over and over again. It was all of this zone to the left, cut back to the right, and James Cook, even though that first half they trailed, he had 81 yards rushing in the first half. He was on pace for a big day, and he eventually got there at 132, or 142, whatever it was. But man, they could not figure out how to stop that play. And so if you're a good coach and if you're a good team, you keep throwing it at them until they prove they can stop it. They didn't stop it. Specifically, T.J. Watt was taken on one-on-one many of these occasions. It wasn't like he was chipped all the time, and there was a young tight end, Jackson Hawes, who was just all over him and did a really good job. When you think of missing 3 offensive starters on your offensive line and you can do that, I mean, to me, that's just an unacceptable performance by the Steelers defense.
Well, let's think about this a little bit as far as what Watt said. He said, I've never been a part of a game or seen a team run the same play, and it kept working. Okay, well, how about Jamar Chase? That was pretty much the same play that kept working over and over again. They targeted him 23 times, as you pointed out. You go back earlier in the year to the Seahawks game. How many times did Kenneth Walker take a toss play and go for big yards, including that 3rd and goal all the way back at, what was it, the 19-yard line?
19-yard line, yeah, he was untouched.
The 20-yard line that he scored a touchdown on. Right. How about Jordan Love over and over again, quick passes out into the flat? He completed 20 in a row. So, you know, with all due respect to T.J. Watt, this is not the first time we've seen one type of play work over and over again against the defense. And to the credit of these offensive coaches they're facing, when they find something that works against the Steelers, they don't go away from it, because apparently the Steelers either don't have the personnel or the coaching staff or both to make adjustments in those situations.
Speaking about adjustments, Aaron Rodgers had an interesting take on adjustments at halftime. He said they're overrated, or it's really not that big of a deal, essentially, when I think I've been told over and over how it is a big deal. You go into halftime and you see different things happen in the second half. I think if you watch the Steelers' opponents over the games we've cited here tonight, something happened in the second half that produced totally different results. So are you a believer of that? Do you think there's credence to what Aaron Rodgers said?
Well, I think players don't have a lot of time to make adjustments per se on their own, because they're getting rehydrated, they're maybe getting retaped or whatever it is, whatever kind of physical health things they need to do to get themselves ready, even mental health things for the second half. The coaches don't need to do that. The coaches have 12 minutes to kind of have a cooling off period like we see in a boxing match, where you go to the corner for a minute or two and you get to regroup. And that's really, you emphasize certain things. I've seen coaches come out, Bob, like they do in the first half of games or the first quarter of games, and they script their first few offensive plays in the second half. That happens. I know that happens in the NFL. So he might have been talking about it from his perspective, but believe me, I don't think coaches are just, sitting around kicking their feet up in the air and eating turkey sandwiches at halftime. They're trying to devise ways to basically try to find a way to adjust to what the other team did in the first half.
And I'm not talking about massive changes, little tweaks of you see what's happened. They have those iPads going all the time. They can look at it and within a couple of minutes develop some sort of strategy. So we'll talk about that and more. We want to hear from you at 412-575-2600. Also, you see our KDKA-TV.com/connect poll brought to you by Penn West University, and that is, will Mike Tomlin's non-losing season streak end this season, yes or no? We'll talk about that. I also do want to get into the Penguins, who had a really good effort tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers, beating them 5-1. I thought their best game of the year. We'll get into that and your calls all coming up right here live. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, KDKA+. All right, welcome back. This is our Xfinity tweet of the night from Dan Orlovsky. This is very interesting. No defense in the NFL has played more snaps than the Steelers so far, 820. No offense in the NFL has played fewer snaps than the Steelers at 667. That's being outplayed by 153 snaps, which is basically, if you do the numbers on, depending on what you think a good or bad game is, you're talking about 2+ games of being oversnapped, which is not a good thing, and that's one of the reasons why, time of possession has been the way it is. But, it's funny, we talk about all this stuff, Andrew, and here they are still tied for the lead, and they could be in sole possession of that lead if they win in Baltimore, a team which has had its share of trouble. And then you look at the Cincinnati Bengals at 4-8. They have a pretty good conference record, and they have a game in Buffalo, another one against the Ravens. You could see theoretically where they can get back in this thing like they did last year and rattle off a bunch of wins. That's how open it is now, whereas, several weeks ago when Baltimore was 1-5, it looked like the Steelers should have won this thing rather easily. It's a weird year.
But it's not a weird year in that the Steelers are right where they always are, which is probably on pace to win 9, best case scenario 10 games. Maybe if the bottom falls out, the streak ends and they go 8-9. So they are where they normally are, and the Ravens have come back to the pack. And the Bengals had to deal with the Joe Burrow injury. Their defense, for as bad as it's been, and it's been awful, they could have easily won that Jets game and that Bears game. And if they win both of those games, they led in the last minute. They win those 2 games, they're 6-6 right now. If Joe Burrow comes back and plays New England last week at home, Joe Flacco had a pick 6 in that game. They might have won that game, and they'd be 5-7 and only a game behind. So it's going to take a lot of things to break their way, but the Steelers and Ravens have to blame themselves because they've left the door cracked open for a Bengals team right now that, of the 3, has the most confidence because they got their best player back, Bob.
Right, and you're right about how close these games have been, and the Steelers could easily have lost the Jets game if not for a 60-yard field goal, and the Patriots game too. So, it goes back and forth those ways, so it's very interesting. We have our number 1 Cochran Go One Better caller of the night tonight, so let's get to the phone lines, beginning with Joe in the South Hills. He joins us on line 2. Hello, Joe. Joe. Joe, don't pay attention to TV. All right, Joe, you're no longer our number 1. You're our number 2, but number 1 Cochran caller of the night. That would be Jerry in South Fayette. Hello, Jerry.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. Mm-hmm. I'd like to know why the play of the game when Rodgers was sacked, it was not roughing the passer. He landed full force, slammed his body into the ground.
It's not roughing the passer. It just isn't. Because he landed. He came from behind. What are you supposed to do in that situation? You're trying to make a play. Roughing, when they're talking about landing, they're talking about after a play is like he forced a fumble on that play. It is not roughing the passer.
It sure looked like it. I've seen a lot less called.
Well, how would you, if you were Joey Bosa, how would you have played that then?
Well, the same thing when Watt sacks a quarterback, he tries to get off to the side, and they call roughing the passer. That's the defensive man's responsibility to not smash him into the ground.
Well, I disagree with you, Jerry, but I respect your opinion. What do you say, Andrew?
This is the first I've heard anybody cite that play as evidence for why the NFL needs to, tighten the screws on defensive players and protect their quarterbacks more. It's a defenseless quarterback. He didn't aim high. He didn't aim low. He hit him right in the middle. He hit him hard. That's called football. So I'm thrilled that they don't call that a penalty. I wouldn't want that penalty ever called on a Steelers player. To me, there's nothing dangerous about it except football is a violent game, and that's what these guys sign up for.
Hey, there were a couple of hits tonight in the Giants game. Jackson Dart.
Oh, my goodness.
What he has to learn is self-preservation there, Pony. When you're in that situation, just get to the out of bounds. You don't have to try for an extra yard. And if you do, you guys like Christian Ellis are going to come up and pop you. And when they do, if you're still in bounds, you're going to pay the price for that.
And how about the gunner?
Gunner, yeah, I don't know how he's still walking.
Gunner got blown up. Gunner looked like he was out cold before he even hit the turf.
Again, it was Ellis who applied that hit.
Yep.
It was helmet to helmet. It was a nasty one for sure. All right, let's go back to Dave in the North Hills. Dave, how are you?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good, what's up?
Okay. Hey, I would just like to comment on, hey, you're not one of them, but you have to stop putting the blame on the coaches. These guys, man, they're not performing.
Well, I think it's a two-way street there, don't you, Dave? I mean, it's one thing to blame the players exclusively, then you leave the coaches off the hook. They're responsible for where players are supposed to be. They're responsible for developing players.
But sometimes they're just not good enough, man. And
well, then you're citing the roster is not good enough, and that can. And thanks for the call, but that can also be an issue too. You know, they loaded up on a lot of guys they felt still had some gas in the tank, and so far that has not really been the case. I think a guy like Darius Slay was just a egregious overpay, and they should never have done it. I didn't see enough in him in the last year in Philadelphia where I thought he had enough to be a shutdown corner. He used to be a very good one. All due respect to his career, Andrew, but he's not the same player, and they gave him a lot of money to come here for 1 year.
I just don't understand how anybody could say when they see the names and the type of players they have on defense and think where they are right now is an acceptable amount of production from those players. And yeah, maybe TJ Watt is not the guy he was last year and definitely not 2 years ago. But you're telling me that it's just okay that he has a game where he doesn't have a quarterback hit, no pressures, no sacks. Look, yeah, the players have to be held accountable. Aaron Rodgers said that after the game. You also expect them to be put in better situations. You brought this up after the Bears game. How is it that guys like DJ Moore are wide open? Wide receivers, great wide receivers, really good ones. No one near them. How is it the same play works over and over and over again in this pass game? Some of that's got to come back on coaching. If it was always the players' faults, then players would get cut all the time and coaches would never get fired. But then, as I say this out loud, that's pretty much what happens here. Coaches don't get fired.
We have some tweets we want to get to. I'm going to read one to you, and then we got to go to a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about that tweet and also the Penguins and their highlights because they had a good game tonight. But this is Bill Z in Seneca, or Bill Z Seneca. He says, where is this revolving door of quarterbacks heading that we've seen here for the last 4 years? And we'll talk about that because regardless of what's happened, the number one issue is finding a franchise quarterback. Eventually they have to do it because this Band-Aid approach is just not going to work every single year and hasn't so far. We'll get into that. More of your calls on the way, plus Penguin highlights against Philly in a win 5-1 tonight. All coming up next right here on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Good, Andrew, I want to get back to that tweet I talked about where the gentleman, Bill, said, where is this revolving door headed with quarterbacks? I mean, it's a year-to-year thing at this point, and, you know, you'd like that to end. It was a luxury having a quarterback on your roster, and you never had to worry about a quarterback, and now all of a sudden, 4 years in a row here, that's the number one question.
Yeah, and where they are right now isn't conducive to finding another one. I mean, there's questions about how many quarterbacks are going to come out based on, you know, the amount of money they can make in NIL money now. How many are going to be available to them when they pick? When they're not, what are the Steelers willing to give up to move up to get their guy? And so this is all the moving parts of the draft that's still so far away from now. But these are the types of things you worry about when you don't have a franchise quarterback. I like Will Howard. I think he has potential as a late-round pick. However, I have huge reservations about putting him out there to play this year with this offensive supporting cast, with this offensive play calling, I don't think it's conducive for him having success right now, Bob. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't either. He hasn't had any reps. I mean, to throw him out there could be, you know, if you saw the Seattle game yesterday, we saw an undrafted quarterback come in, and he did not look very good for Minnesota. By the way, you see the results of that poll here. 88% of the pollers think that non-losing streak will end this year. You know, they could very well win any of these teams, really, at 8-9, 9-8. And I don't think you'll see a wild card team coming out of this division. I think it's either going to be the division winner or that's it.
I agree with you on that, Bob. Patriots found their swagger again, huh? 2-4-13 seasons, and now they're atop the AFC. How about that?
11-2, yeah. Smoking that Giants team. Boy, that's an interesting dynamic. Denver and New England. Who would have thought that? Indy's fallen off a little bit, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow, Pony. Thanks as always. Appreciate your time.
All right, Bob. See ya.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow right here at 10:35. Have a good night.